Welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I want to thank Michelle Lamb for helping me out with this and kind of inspiring me to do this episode. I didn't really think about it until she talked about geriatrics and long-term care. And you can find at the LTC, Long-Term Care Pharmacist Connection. It's a private group, but 4,000 members in there. But I do want to thank her for kind of inspiring this because we've gotten to the point where we have specialized PGY-1s, and one of the easiest ways to kind of talk about this is to take a specific type of PGY-1 that you would need to kind of move on to the next one. And obviously with long-term care, we'll be talking about geriatrics. So where do you start? And the one thing you really kind of want is a little group of residencies, because you've got thousands to choose from, quite literally. And if you go to the ASCP website, their meeting is going to be November 4th to 7th in San Diego. And they did a virtual residency showcase on October 15th. And part of that showcase was residency showcase speed dating. And there are a number of programs in there. And what I want to focus on a little bit is the PGY-1. That is kind of leading to a PGY-2. So often we think, oh, well, you know, somebody just got a PGY-2 because they knew somebody or Uber qualified, whatever it was. But when you read those letters of intent from somebody going to PGY-1 to PGY-2, you see that it was kind of almost the path was there and they were already on that path. And what was happening was, all of the time they were doing their PGY-1, they not only did that general part that they had, but they also had in mind a number of electives. And the way that it's kind of set up in the PGY-1 can really, really help you get that PGY-2 that you want. Now, many students are taking early decisions, making PGY-2 even more competitive. And if you look at PGY-2s versus PGY-1s, PGY-1s are super homogenous in terms of the schools that go to a certain residency site, where the people are from, the Midwest or the East Coast or whatever. It tends to be very, very regional. However, when you get to PGY-2, it is the exact opposite. It's very heterogeneous or heterogeneous, where you're going to see students from across the country going into PGY-2. So my favorite one to look at is Chicago University. Chicago, I want to say it's not University of Illinois Chicago, the school, but at U Chicago Medicine, half of their residents, the PGY-1s, are from either Illinois or kind of like Wisconsin, just that area in the Midwest. And some of them maybe from a little bit further away. But a significant number are from Chicagoland area, whereas the PGY-2s are from all over. And the same thing is true here. So when you're doing PGY-1 and you have this idea that you're maybe thinking about geriatrics in the future, I want to show you what it looks like to do a PGY-1 in geriatrics where it's already kind of set up for you, or how you kind of make it for yourself. So I've seen over and over again where somebody actually says, okay, there's no ambulatory care clinic in my residency, but I still want that option for when I graduate. So they work on that with their preceptors and get those things done. So let's see what it looks like. So what I'll do is I'm going to just focus on the VAs, because the VAs are the easiest, and then Maryland, because I know it. I went to school at Maryland, and I happen to we haven't talked in forever, but I happen to be classmates with somebody that's over at Maryland as well. Okay, so the connections, the actual links here are not very good. You do want to do that extra bit of research, and I get what they were doing with those links. They're just trying to give you something that will get you to the place that you need to go. But they either match you to like ASHP or the hospital itself, and what you really want to get are the brochures, the PDFs, and those types of things. So this Connecticut healthcare system, I'll go through, and San Francisco VA, these aren't very helpful links, but what is helpful, and then this is Minnesota, what are helpful links is to go into these PDFs, and I'll show you them because they're so valuable in terms of figuring out what it is somebody in PGY-1 would do if they were just thinking geriatrics, maybe with just their PGY-1, or they wanted to move on. Okay, so I can make this a little bit bigger here, and we'll just look down at the bottom here at the PGY-1 pharmacy residency electives with geriatrics, and what you do is you basically say, I'm applying to this program and I want to take my 12 weeks of elective rotations in geriatrics. And what you would do those in would be acute care for elders consult team, geriatric long-term care, home-based primary care, geriatric clinic, Parkinson's disease and movement disorder clinic, and epilepsy clinic. And something that I talked about with Michelle was how important psych is in geriatrics. And we've heard maybe of the dementia wave where the population is aging, and dementia is not an if but when with that great a number, and it's a matter of being able to take care of them. So when we look at this PGY-1, we can see that by making these types of electives, we can take any residency, really, if these types of things are available, and make them into a sort of geriatric rotation. Now, when you look at the Minneapolis VA, you see there's a mental health track. And the general residency is going to be, you've got these required learning experience, the mental illness clinic, acute care, ambulatory care, geriatrics, women's health. And then when you get into the electives, that's when maybe you start moving into some other specialties. Although this one doesn't really have an additional set that would really lead you, except for pain management, maybe into the big three, which are mental illness, pain management, palliative care, and geriatrics. But when you look at their website, they have three PGY-2s, and this is one of the PGY-2 brochures, and we'll look down here at the bottom, and this is the PGY-2 geriatrics overview. And one of the most important things you can do, not only in your application but in your letter, is to start looking at these experiences as you look to PGY-2. So if you say, I want to move on and do, well, you want to show, not tell, as kind of the most basic writing tenet. And one of the ways that you show, not tell, is to show that you understand what somebody who's a PGY-2 would do. They would do required learning experiences in geriatric psychiatry, home-based primary care, community living center. And then we would see that what longitudinal experiences would they have, and it would be geriatrics research. And maybe your research would be with geriatrics or psych or pain management. And then when we look at the electives, we see palliative care. One of the huge ones is deprescribing, especially when you get to palliative care, pain management, those types of things. So what it does is, as you're applying for PGY-1, when you show that you know what's coming up in the next year, it makes for a great application. Okay. So one of the best places to kind of look for the big three, the psychiatric pharmacy residency, the geriatric pharmacy residency, and pain and palliative care, is the Minneapolis VA website, and then kind of seeing the difference between the pharmacy practice residency and pharmacy practice residency mental health track. Okay. All right. So as we're kind of moving along with this, and let me get rid of these other ones. When you go on to look at, was this the San Francisco VA, when you look at their kind of FAQ, you see that, okay, if you want to apply for PGY-1 and you're not sure if geriatrics or ambulatory care is your thing, you apply for that one. If you are going to sure you're about geriatrics, then you go for that one. If you're sure about ambulatory care, you go for that one. It's so important to know that this NMS code thing is something that some end up applying to the wrong residency, and it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly. They unfortunately didn't do the research they needed to. But the NMS code for the PGY-1 pharmacy residency and the geriatrics elective and the ambulatory care elective have three different numbers. So 188313 for the PGY-1, 188322 for the geriatrics elective, 188321 with ambulatory care. And so important to look at these types of rotations so that when you're having those conversations, especially at those breakout showcases, if it's an individual program, or even at the SHP showcases, that you're aware that certain rotations are there and certain rotations are not. And how are you going to get those types of things that you're going to need if you're going on to PGY-2? Let me not go on to PGY-2 quite yet. Let me talk a little bit about Maryland, because what this does is, unfortunately, the PGY-1 doesn't make clear how you would get to a geriatrics PGY-2. Although, if I've helped enough people with Maryland applications to know that it is a very adult medicine based core, and then pediatrics would have to kind of be on the side as an elective. So when we go down, what you're really looking for with learning experiences, how prescriptive is it? And how much of it is going to be elective? And you have some that have, I think it was Vanderbilt, that only had, 1 or 2 months that were, this is what you do. And then other months are, well, what do you want to do? But this is extremely prescriptive. 8 months of core experiences, 3 elective experiences, and 1 month of project time. So those 8 months are generally going to be adult medicine. So if you're thinking of some kind of pediatrics later on, then you need to come kind of down here and see, is there going to be enough pediatrics for me? And are you allowed to do multiple ones? That's something I couldn't answer. But you can see that when you look at it, the experiences, they're a month, but you could do heme onc as 2 different parts, pain palliative care, but a lot of this is adult medicine, and just a tiny fraction of pediatrics. Would this be something that works out? And again, we're talking about geriatrics. So when you're saying, all right, well, I'm going to do the PGY-1, well, how does the PGY-1 lead me to the geriatrics PGY-2? And sometimes it's through the ambulatory care clinics. But when you look at this, you're going to see a very hospital-oriented adult internal medicine type of program. But let's go on to kind of the PGY-2 and that next step, because Maryland would be one of the best places to get PGY-2. Well, it's just my opinion, but I think that it'd be one of the best PGY-2s you could get. So something you always want to make sure to do is, especially if they've got a video on it, if you've got a pronunciation, you want to make sure that you can do it. So how do you pronounce L-A-M-Y? Okay. And when you listen to Dr. Brandt do the Peter Lamy Center, then you're like, okay, I know how to pronounce it right, so that it's not awkward when you first words come out of your mouth and you mispronounce the center dedicated to their drug therapy and aging. But it is, there are some videos here. I won't play them for you, but just to let you know that this video really, it does about 8 minutes or so. There was their 20th anniversary, and I think that it does a really good job of, kind of explaining where PGY-2s and geriatric pharmacy have gone on to be, and just kind of who those alumni are and what they've done. But really great program. This is Nicole Brandt, who's the director of the Peter Lamy Center, a classmate of mine. And then here's their actual video. That's weird. Only 648 subscribers for the School of Pharmacy. Maybe I'll talk to them about that. But then when we kind of get back to the VAs, one of the nice things that you can do with the VA is look at all of the VAs and kind of see what, once you kind of have that idea from the San Francisco VA and the Minneapolis VA and the Connecticut VA of what it means to do that specialized PGY-1, then you start looking at the other VAs that you might consider and start saying, okay, well, I can see these pieces there, and I can see these are the electives, or I can see that no matter what I do, I'm not going to be able to put the pieces together. So the VA is one of my favorites in terms of residency. If you're thinking ambulatory care, geriatrics, I think the opportunities opportunities that you're going to have are phenomenal. But just to get back to what Michelle Lamb and I were kind of talking about is the way that you research something like this and the way that you start kind of moving towards earning a residency placement is start talking to the people that, yes, are at these places, but also making yourself a very educated person about them. And once you start kind of looking at each of the individual residency placements and sites and what they're offering, as I did with just a fraction of these, I mean, there's a dozen of them, then you become very educated. And I tell you, it really comes off very well when you start talking to those people that you're interested in, that you're asking those higher level questions. I see that, at this VA, there's this opportunity, and that was certainly exciting, but I saw that you have this opportunity at yours, and really talking about the trade-offs and something that you'll need to really focus on when you get those recommendations, because the very last box of the recommendations is, how does this person fit this site? And if you have articulated to your recommenders, and the recommenders are from the appropriate APPEs, then it's really easy to say, okay, well, this person really understands the geriatric pharmacy opportunities that are going to be at this particular site. And then when they read that from your letter of intent, when the recommenders also say they're really good at this stuff, they've got experience in psych, they've got some experience with long-term care and these types of things, then it just fits. And again, it's the match, because we are matching those that have those interests, that have those backgrounds and so forth. So my kind of 3 steps that I would take here are: first, go to the ASCP website. Obviously, you can or can't make it to the annual meeting, but check out those places under the Residency Showcase Speed Dating, and you might have to click on the little down arrow to kind of open all of those up. And then the links may not get you to where you want to be. You generally want to get to a PDF that shows all of the opportunities that you have, or maybe a different one. And what they're just trying to do is get you somewhere near there, and I get that. But what you want to do is then start comparing those, and from those comparisons, that's where your questions come in when you're thinking about mid-year, so that when you come into mid-year and are asking these types of questions, it's a completely different ballgame, because you have educated yourself on the opportunities out there. And now come the real questions that you need answered, which are, well, can I make this work here, or is the other place a better place to apply to? I don't know. Kind of depends on what your needs are and what theirs are. All right. Well, this has been the Pharmacy Residency Podcast. Again, I appreciate Michelle Lamb and getting to talk to her about this. And what I think I'll try to do is maybe do this for pediatrics as well. I know that's a popular one, but it really comes down to, when you're thinking about that PGY-2, getting the right PGY-1 kind of in that group that you're going to apply to, and knowing that those electives are there. It doesn't have to be exactly like the VA San Francisco, where it's like, here are the 12 weeks that you can have with geriatrics. But when you're starting to look at other places, it's going to be important that those electives are there, so you can move on to PGY-2 and have that significant advantage in getting to those. Okay. All right. Need help with your letter of intent? Let me know. TonyThePharmacist@gmail.com, residency.teachable.com. That's where you can kind of connect with me.